Hello, Bill Molyneux here with Goober the Traveling Bear, and we are working on a book review, and this is going to be posted on both Bill's History World with Goober the Traveling Bear and our Wargaming World, which is Bill's Wargame World. And Bill's Wargame World, when we get money from YouTube for reviews, we donate it. And this month we made some donations to the Maryland Veterans Museum to Miss Connie and Mr. Nell. All right, let's stop gabbing. We're going to talk about the American Heritage picture books of the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, and World War II. I'm not going to break these up. We're going to do the complete set. We'll start off with the Revolutionary War. I'm probably going to keep each one under a couple minutes. These books, by the way, were my, pathway to loving history and all I like to do in the world of history and help sites and visit many historic sites. All right, let's get out the volume of the American Revolution first. By the way, we're going to do this American Revolution book, and I'm going to dedicate this review to Robert and Bob Studi at Fort Frederick. So let's do our review. First off, property of Rick Jones, 232 Chestnut Street. Many kids had these books and many libraries, and when the libraries discarded them in their book sales, many people would pick them up. So, get out my pointer. Bruce Canton was very involved in these. American Heritage magazine was a hardcover magazine back then. And this is Simon & Schuster publisher, and the date is 1958. I believe this is a soldier of Rhode Island, but I'm checking. So, we're going to flip through the table of contents, and I'm going to pause the camera here. All right, there are so many wonderful paintings and pictures in these books. Here we have Arnold and the raid on Quebec, which of course was sort of a disaster. You'll notice that these books, we'll see it in all of them, really nice detail on both the paintings, the illustrations, and every time you flip, and this is why so many young children and young adults and old adults like me love these. Here we have the Battle of Saratoga and the surrender. And of course we all know that helped bring France into the war. Here's the importance of sea power. And look at this detailed interior of how everything was stored in the ship. I mean, it is just incredible. And as a young person with this book, it would open up people's imaginations, more so than you get now on like an iPad. So, what I really do think is, here we have George Washington and Lafayette at Yorktown, and the surrender at Yorktown. Now, you'll notice here on these sides, besides the reading here, for young readers, you also have these little pictures. Whoops, there's my foot. Sorry about that, everyone. We have these little pictures, and they help enhance on these margins. French officer's dress sword, for instance. Okay, and then we have a wonderful index in the back. Now I'm intentionally using the flipping method on this book review rather than the slides. So, look at this. Jones' Great Victory. This book on the American Revolution is 80 years old? Look at that, Burgoyne from Saratoga. Vibrant picture still, 80 years ago in this book. All right. American Revolution, American Heritage Picture History of the American Revolution. So, what do you think? Goober says 2 paws up. Goober says 2 paws up. So, we're going to hit the American Civil War next. Let's pause our camera and get that one ready. We're now doing the American Heritage Picture History of the American Civil War. I'm dedicating this review to a wonderful author, historian, scientist, Scott Mingus. And so, Scott, I hope you enjoy this review. And Scott's written, I'm going to say, over 40, 50 books. It's amazing between all the Johnny Reb material and the Cannonball, and then, of course, all his Civil War books, which are fantastic. So, and look at, here's Stuart Lebo, 409 March Street, Reading, PA, 1907. Zip code. I wonder if he's still, when he had this. All right. So, again, narrated Bruce Canton, American Heritage Magazine, which is a hardbacks. We're going to flip our next page. And this was printed in 1960. Here we have a Union cavalryman with a drawn saber. A table of contents. All right. Now, if you're into miniature wargaming, there is one big reason as a kid you would love this book. And in this time period of the 1960s, there was a thing called Toy Soldiers by the Marx Company, and they were making sets called the Blue and the Gray. And I'm going to pause the camera. Okay, so if you're a kid and you love the Civil War and the Blue and the Gray Marx Sears play sets were out and about, these maps were incredible. See if I can zero in on them. So you have the blue soldiers, which are the Union, the Federals, and our rebels are Confederates. And as you can see, this is the Battle of Fredericksburg. This is a darn big high hill. But these maps, many kids, including myself, would open up this book and look for the maps. Here's Chancellorsville. And again, I apologize for my glare here and there, but here's the Wilderness Church. And these maps made this book specific. So, the Siege of Vicksburg. Pictures. Here's the sunken road in Fredericksburg. Now, look at that. Isn't that an amazing painting to put in this book? So this would get many kids, boys and girls, interested in the American Civil War. Now, here is Gettysburg. How many of you out there had this book or still do and would set up toy soldiers to fight this battle? Here's a little Round Top. And of course we have the Trossel Farm, the Cadore House. Elwood Chris and the Bliss Farm would be out here. I guess about in here. Alright. So, just a stunning book. And these illustrations and maps that these books contain. So here they're talking about the artillery soldiers for the Confederacy would have a kepi that was red. Here's your different plates, as they're called. Northern Camp Life. Entire chapter on the enslavement, slavery. Here we have another map of Chickamauga. Emancipation with Abraham Lincoln. We have Hood and the Offensive of Atlanta. Covers the entire war. And then, of course, Lincoln is re-elected. And then we have our victory. Slavery is abolished. This is always an interesting picture. Look at Lincoln before the war and near the end of his death. Quite amazing how he aged. So, of course, Lincoln is assassinated, and John Wilkes Booth is on the run until he doesn't quite get captured, he gets killed. Thousands upon thousands died in the American Civil War. So, very nice ending here and tributes. So, very good index. So the American Heritage Picture History of the Civil War, Goober gives 4 paws up. Alright, we'll pause the camera here and get ready for our next book. Welcome back. Well, I guess it would help if I showed you the binding. American Heritage Picture History of World War I. Now, World War I, as you see, this book isn't as thick as the American Revolution or the Civil War, but we played a great part in the Great War. And here we have, I think he's a French drummer. So let's check this one out. Published American Heritage. Let's find out our date. So, and our date for this is 1964. 1964, again, we have our contents. And now, World War I is an interesting war. It is not as interesting for historians to follow compared to World War II, the Revolution, and of course the American Civil War. A lot of it has to do with we were late in the war as far as our country. So our book starts off with, of course, the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand and the beginning of the war. Once again, incredible paintings, but we are now moving to more pictures. Just like the Civil War had some pictures rather than just paintings, our World War I book really shows the death and carnage of war. And World War I, of course, is primarily trench war. A lot of artillery, and of course World War I marks the use of barbed wire, heavy siege cannons, but most of all motorized vehicles called tanks, armored fighting vehicles. These broke through the barbed wire. So World War I was our first real modern war with all the most modern weapons such as machine guns, barbed wire, trenches, artillery, tanks, and when I find a page that has it, we're going to have airplanes. So, we also, airplanes, U-boats. Of course, the U-boat is one of the reasons that America joined into the war finally, was the sinking of the Lusitania. There is some massive artillery at the Virginia Military Museum in Newport News. And they have a lot of World War I artillery there. Also at the United States Army Heritage, AHAC. So, Wilson goes to end the war, Versailles, triumph, and once again, this book is phenomenal. Just a wonderful, wonderful book. And if you're not really knowledgeable of World War I, this book has a lot of drawings, illustrations, and a lot of pictures, and then good descriptions throughout about the different things that were happening. Oh gosh, you know what? I didn't cover gas. As you see, these soldiers are blinded from the gas, mustard gas, and they're all holding each other's shoulders as they walk. Terrible, terrible gas warfare. So, we're going to say World War I, the American Heritage Picture History. I dedicate this review to Matthew Young, curator, historian, World War I reenactor at the CSS News Education Center in Kinston, North Carolina. A great historian, and I also have to say we made several donations to him and his site, and he's also got a really good sense of humor about Goober the Traveling Bear, who's right there. Okay, we're going to pause our camera and we're ready to hit World War II. All right, here we have World War II. And, you know, I have a couple people I like to dedicate this review to. Dr. Patrick Branton, professor at the United States Army War College in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, and Mr. Caleb there, historian at the museum. They let me make a lot of videos there last year, including on post. And I'd also like to mention historian Mr. Nell at the Maryland Veterans Museum. He's made a lot of videos for me along with his wife Connie, and they've been wonderful. And we'll be making a video with them on the Korean War in the future, once my life gets a little less complicated. So, World War II. We're going to open up our book. We have no youngin', no kid, no child, no one put their name or address in this one. Now, we're going to have a lot more pictures because, of course, World War II era, we're really working on cameras. Date-wise, so table of contents, and I'm looking for our publishing date, and I'm going to pause the camera. All right, this is saying 1964. Look at that. Arlington National Cemetery. Really interesting introduction. And vibrant pictures. You know, if I'm going to... this is the Hulk of American tank, Sherman tank off Saipan in the Marianas. We have our Shermans. So, what does this book have? It covers everything. It covers, I just flipped the page and here we are, radar. There is so much to read in this book. The battle debacle of France. Of course, Germany captured Paris in just a few weeks. Something I'd like to say about that, though, is the French soldiers lost over 1 million men defending Paris for those 6-7 weeks. I mean, they put up a very tough fight. The Germans were using a blitzkrieg style of warfare that was fast and mobile. And that was not the case. The French had built static defensive lines. Operation Sea Lion. It never happened where the Germans were going to invade England. But because of the Battle of Britain, which they cover here very nicely, they were unable to control the air across the English Channel. As we flip our pages, here we have Churchill and Roosevelt and Stalin, Japanese, and these huge pictures. I mean, I mean, this is 14, 15 inches across. I mean, now, Operation Torch, Casablanca, where our leaders met. They cover the politics of the war. Oh my goodness gracious. Now, if you're a young person, these just jump out at you. Here we have our American Allied planes for the Pacific. Here our Japanese Zero, our Betty bomber, of course the B-29. They just jump out at you. Now I'm going to pause the camera. I'm going to look for the B-17. Okay, planes over Europe. Here are German bombers, our Stuka. This is the Defiant. It had no forward-firing machine guns, but it had a 4 machine gun turret that was very hard to turn. And this thing really wasn't the best idea. And then your Spitfire and Hurricane. The BF-109, ME-109, depending on... I guess we can't say anything about World War II without mentioning Eisenhower. Goober the Traveling Bear has been to his home several times. In my old wargaming group, I had a few people that worked there as volunteers. So here we are with D-Day. And D-Day, this book review is being done on March 15th. And D-Day is right around the corner. Here we have the Battle of the Bulge. My Uncle Richard fought in the Battle of the Bulge. He was still driving a Stuart tank at that time. Well, that's a pretty famous picture there for the end of the war. The nuclear war begins and ends just as fast. Our kamikaze attacks and the Marines, the end of the rising sun. Just picture after picture. It's just incredible how much information they put in these books. Well, here we have the Flying Fortress, the B-17. Look how cool this is. Has the information about the bomber. As a young person, these are gateway books, and I wish they were still being printed. As far as I know, they're probably all over eBay. I did not look per se. I did find the Civil War one is on eBay everywhere. And of course, just like in World War I, there are U-boats and submarines for both. Americans are using submarines very effectively against the Japanese supply convoys. Alright, I'm going to look for one more plate. Well, Winston Churchill. Current history may not be as kind to him as it used to be, but I still think he was the right leader at the right time for England. He really kept their morale up as far as the English people. They were pretty much all that was left fighting the Germans. All right. Well, amazing book. I'm flipping through this and forget that I'm supposed to be narrating. Here's our British Lancaster, Halifax, our B-24 bomber. ME-262, the first jet fighter zipping around. Here's the Thunderbolt. Littlestown, Pennsylvania has a 2/3 scale Thunderbolt built in front of their football field in Littlestown, Pennsylvania. P-38 Lightning, P-51. And again, these plates were just fantastic if you were a kid. So, I guess I babbled on long enough about the World War II book. It covers everything. It's very thick. This is a good, if you're reading a half an hour a night, I bet this will take at least 2 weeks to get through, to read all the sidebars and all. I'm going to pause it here. All right, well, the American Revolution, the Civil War, World War I, World War II. Must-have books. Yeah, they're old, but they have a lot of current information that's still as useful now as it was then. And I gotta say, if you see these in an antique store, bookstore, yard sale, pick them up. If you have children, grandchildren, they might really enjoy these books, because besides reading, there's a lot of pictures, a lot of paintings, and I will say, especially on the World War II one and a bit on the World War I, there is some graphic images of death and destruction, which is what war is, death and destruction. And so I'm going to close this out with saying thank you to everyone that watches my videos in both channels, follows my adventures with Goober the Traveling Bear. Thank you. Stay safe. Be kind, be courteous, leave a comment, let me know what you think of our going back in time to the American heritage picture history of our 4 major conflicts. Thank you, everyone.